Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Scaling Station podcast, where we highlight how real estate and prop tech leaders are rethinking the way deals get done. I'm your host, Will Radosky, and today I'm joined by Lilian Chen, CEO of Proptimal. Lilian, how's it going?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for our podcast today.
Absolutely. I've been really looking forward to it. If you don't mind just telling the audience a bit about yourself, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. I'm Lilian Chen, the founder of Proptimal. We're working on providing institutional tools and resources to everyday real estate developers and real estate companies. A little background about myself. I was born in Taiwan, and when I was 12, our family moved to America. It was a huge change for me because now I have to understand two different worlds. I didn't know anyone in Taiwan back then who worked in commercial real estate. But when I was in America, a whole world kind of opened up to me to commercial real estate, to institutional real estate. Now I could do anything that I wanted. Over the years, I have worked as a financial analyst, started a real estate analyst consulting company, and now we are building the 10x Real Estate Analyst.
Love it. And was there any one moment that led you to found Optimal or the 10x Real Estate Analyst?
Yeah. So I think let's talk about why I love real estate. I think it was a lot of exploration back in college where I had to dig through different careers. And I realized that real estate has three of the things I love: people, buildings, and money. So then I made up my mind and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go into this industry. Initially, I was working on institutional deals with a large real estate developer back in California. That's how I started my career. When I started the consulting company, we were serving large institutional clients who had billions of dollars under management. But then as we continue to expand our client base, I realized that the majority of the real estate company doesn't have all the in-house analysts, resources, and tools. And a lot of people are just kind of figuring out as they go. So people tend to just make it, fake it until they make it. This is where Proptimal came in, which I realized that if people actually had these tools and knowledges, their lives could be so much easier.
100%. Yeah, I think that's amazing. Can you talk me through your background a little, like where you started as an analyst and the progression to what led you here today?
I started off as a financial analyst at Ensemble Real Estate, which is based in Long Beach, California. And during this time, it was really exciting because I was 1, 2 years out of college and I got to work on a couple of master developments. So the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the Santa Clara Tasman East District, and the Iovance Biotherapeutics headquarters in Philadelphia as well. So it was me realizing, wow, the world that we actually live in is just built by people who are like me and by companies that I work with. Hundreds of different people go into every single project. You look around, you walk around downtown, you see buildings, you don't know how they're built. And then it's now suddenly I'm in the trenches with these people and making these deal happen. And I can point at different buildings and say, hey, by the way, I underwrote that. And that's so cool to me.
That is awesome. Well, zooming out a little, and for the audience listening, I highly encourage you to check out Lilian's LinkedIn. She's definitely a voice and someone with great content around prop tech and real estate. So I wanted to dive into, from your perspective, how is the prop tech landscape shifting right now? And do you see any gaps or opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. And thank you for the shout out as well. I think there's a lot changing in prop tech right now. Let's talk about what AI has done to prop tech, right? Because I think before that, prop tech, it's always been a thing. There's a few technologies here and there that people are aware of, but the majority of the market isn't accessing. What AI has done is it has allowed people who have really good industry experience, but very little technical background to start prototyping and learning how to build the software they want. The barrier to entry has become much lower. In the past, you would have to hire somebody in-house raise VC money to be able to build PropTech. Whereas now you can prototype on vibe coding tools and then send that prototype to get a couple of people to test it out to see if people are willing to pay for it. And of course, you're going to have to scrap whatever version you build with vibe coding tools because they're not good enough as of the time that we're speaking right now. If you want to hire somebody else to actually take that MVP prototype and build it into a full software, the costs have gone down so much that it becomes feasible to do it without raising outside money and without going through the typical Silicon Valley SaaS startup path. So what that has changed is it allows people in real estate who have a lot of industry experience to start taking charge of building these softwares and shaping how the PropTech industry is headed instead of relying on outsiders who have a tech background to solve problems for real estate.
100%. I think that's a great point, and a large reason as to why I started the podcast was the emergence of so many tools. And I guess across your career, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned working across so many deals and advising a wide range of companies?
That's a really good question. When you say lessons, do you want to dive a little bit deeper into deal related lessons or interpersonal lessons or just career lessons in general?
I think deal related lessons might be interesting.
So, deal related lesson, if I could summarize one thing to take away from, is I realized that there are so many different companies who do completely different things. And the best people who are in real estate tend to specialize in these one or two strategies that they're really good at. Whereas the beginners or people who are just okay at their job, they tend to chase trends. There's a difference between being in real estate and doing it to make money in the short term. And there's also difference between somebody else who is in it to build a career around an entire strategy and be extremely good at what they do. And the people who double down on their own unique strategy advantage tend to be the ones who are sticking around over long term. So that's what I have to say is a lot of times I see advice on LinkedIn, gurus on YouTube saying in 2025, you need to invest in this and this. I just kind of go, yeah, but do you have a unique advantage of doing this strategy or are you just following what everyone else is doing? If you're following everyone else, that probably doesn't work out very well in the long run.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. And I guess going back to AI, with so much hype around it, and given that it's not perfect today, whether it's coding or LLMs,
Yeah.
what's your perspective on how real estate companies should or shouldn't be using it today?
Should we talk about how they shouldn't be using it before we dive in?
Yes.
I see a lot of mistakes and misconceptions. I would love to hear your thoughts. But I think one of the things is everyone's talking about AI, but nobody really knows what it is.
Mhm.
So I think to most people in commercial real estate, AI is this magic black box, this wizard where you can ask any question and you expect a perfect answer. But that's not what AI does. All that AI is, you can think about it as a textbook that has all the knowledge in the entire internet that is publicly available. So then, if you want to go and find something in this digital magic textbook, you can ask questions and it would tell you everything that it knows. And then if the information is not in the textbook, it starts to make things up because it doesn't have the right answer in its database. The problem with real estate and people using AI and getting frustrated with it is that in commercial real estate, most of the valuable data are not publicly available. Right. So if you're trying to get AI to answer questions about data that are not publicly available, how are you expecting it to get this information?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think even when it is pulling from the internet and from sources, I read an article lately that two of the top three sources are Reddit and Wikipedia, which on commercial real estate deals cannot be a reputable source. And then I agree that one fear I have is when it doesn't have an answer and it can't cite a source, that's when it starts to come up with answers of its own, and that cannot be used in a real deal.
So I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, because people are using it without giving it context, right? So now let's look at the flip side, which is the correct way to use this in this research context, is you can go to the database that you're already paying for. There's a reason why people pay so much for these real estate databases. Take that information, download it into a PDF or a Excel file, and then upload that context into the AI for the AI to summarize it for you. Because now AI is able to do all these summarizing that would have taken a human a much longer period of time. That's where AI is good at. And fundamentally, most people don't know what it is. They don't know what it can do and cannot do. And if you're trying to get it to do things that it's not very good at, you're going to wound up very frustrated. But if you get frustrated, then you miss out on exploring all these things that AI is good at and that you can automate your processes with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a interesting line people have to walk, because obviously you can get left behind and you can accomplish a lot more with. I've spoken to quite a bit of founders who are teams of 3, where 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they would have needed a team of 20. So I think it's cool. And what's an example, like a 60-page lease or something you might upload and try to extract, either a summary or something from a LLM?
So 60-page lease, that's fine. But I would caveat to say that if you are trying to summarize something where the details need to be 100% correct, AI is not the best at it. A good example would be if you want to learn about a particular strategy, an asset class, or a particular market, and there's so much information on that market where you just don't have time to read all the market reports, the news, and all these things, and you need to consolidate them really quickly. AI is a perfect use for that, right? So that's just on the research front. You can use AI to learn any topic that you want. For the first time, we can learn anything that we want on the internet within seconds, right? If you want to really get good at a topic, it probably would take you a day or two to become an expert on that topic, because now we have AI and you can do that. I think people completely miss the big picture. They're focused on, what is the software that I need to get? How do I not get left behind? How is AI not working? AI is so stupid, right? They're focused on these lower level tasks, but they're missing out on the fact that they can become anything they want. If they don't know how to code, they can learn how to code. If they want to know about certain asset class, they can know about certain asset class. If they want to have some, get themselves trained on tax advice and how real estate financials work, they can learn that. They can learn an entire real estate 101 that is at the college level course in their living room in an afternoon.
Right. I think as an industry, a lot of people say real estate's very slow to adopt technology. And traditionally, I think it has been to an extent. But curious if you had an opinion on that, or you've seen a shift for more people utilizing technology and adopting new tools.
That's a really interesting point, that real estate people don't tend to adopt technology. I actually think of it as the opposite. I think that's a huge misconception. I think real estate people are actually some of the savviest tech users that I've come across, but just not in the way that traditionally the startup world thinks. Let's point out a couple of things. Silicon Valley startups and generally the startup world use completely different softwares from commercial real estate companies. So I'll give you an example. Silicon Valley startups, let's say if you want to build a website, you probably use something like Webflow or coding tools. If you are a real estate company, you would probably use WordPress. You would probably use Go High Level, Squarespace, Wix, right? Completely different things. And the thing is, I talk to my Silicon Valley friends and I say, hey, I built my entire website on Go High Level. They ask me, what is Go High Level, right? They wouldn't know somebody like Alex Hermosi or Cody Sanchez or Grant Cardone, but they would know somebody like Brian Chesky. It feels like we are living in different worlds and have completely different tools. I feel that real estate people have been very misunderstood because they're not using the typical softwares, and instead they're getting a bunch of different softwares and piecing them together with Zapier, right? They're connecting different softwares with tools that automate instead of using technology. So I think that's very much understating the amount of real estate usage that people use.
Absolutely. I think a lot of listeners will appreciate that sentiment. Um, do you think small to mid-sized firms are kind of left out and not able to adopt as much technology, or because they can use different tools and integrate them, that they're actually on the same playing field as the big firms?
I think it depends. If we're talking about the PropTech startups that are the hottest, latest, and greatest AI agents, for the most part, they are more targeted towards institutional companies. If you're a real estate startup and you go and raise VC money, the deal is not going to pencil for you if you sell to small, medium-sized companies. The reason is because most of these softwares are pretty much specialized, right? You can have something that does property management, you can have software that only does a part of construction. For a small company to justify these expenses, they would need to have enough scale to be able to justify buying, let's say, 20 different softwares for an entire deal. Large companies can do that because they have the scale. But what smaller companies need is maybe 10% of all of these 20 different tools. They need an entire toolbox. So they're left out in that sense that they don't get as much access to software that make you pay for the annual subscription all at once because they can't commit to the annual. There's plenty of solutions that are out there that are available to small, medium-sized companies. For example, ChatGPT, which I think is the most powerful one out of all of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And kind of looking ahead, maybe in 5 years or 10 years, what does successful prop tech adoption look like? Or do you see any trends that might be developing, from 2025 on?
That is really hard to say, right? I think we're living in a world right now where AI is creating so many different uncertainties and so much room for new players to succeed. And that's really what I'm hoping for, because if you look at the Silicon Valley go-to-market playbook, it doesn't work for real estate in a traditional sense. Even with the more traditional SaaS or AI companies, the go-to-market playbook has changed already. To give you an example, in the past, if you want to be a market leader, if you want to really succeed, you need to have a really good product. And if you have a really good product and a really good team to develop that product, that's going to give you the advantage over everyone else. But now the product is no longer the advantage because the cost to build product is so cheap and anyone can copy software pretty easily. So then now what they call moat, which is your unique value proposition, is your distribution, right? How do you get distribution across an industry where it is so fragmented geographically by asset types and whatnot, and people aren't really talking to each other, right? That is going to be something that is still hard to solve, but hopefully for some companies that are using AI, somebody will figure out a way to do that really well.
Let's hope so. I've interviewed a couple of prop tech founders and hope that some tune into the show. Last time we spoke, we talked a bit about venture capital as opposed to bootstrapping.
Mm-hmm.
And wanted to see if you could shed some light on the choice between bootstrapping and raising venture capital, and if that's changed in the past couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. So what tends to happen is you start to see that VCs are requiring more when you're raising your pre-seed round. I'm going to assume everyone has some basic idea of how fundraising works, but your pre-seed is basically your first round of funding. In the past, you'd be able to draft up a prototype on a website or on a PowerPoint, get a couple of people to sign up to your waiting list, and then go to a VC and say, hey, I've had 100 people sign up for my wait list, and this seems to be a promising idea, and I want to raise $250,000 for this idea to build the initial prototype. Now, that's no longer really the case because VC know that you can get so much farther without money now. By the time you're raising your pre-seed round, which is your first round, they would have expected you to have a prototype already and some traction already. Also, because the cost of software has decreased over time, and AI is now able to automate a lot of various functions in your business, such as marketing, bookkeeping, and whatnot. You don't need as much money anymore as startups, right? What has become a notable trend is this concept of seed strapping, right? Which is in the past, if you want to build a company, you need to keep raising until you become so profitable that you don't need to raise anymore or that you sell or IPO. Now, what happens is a lot of people are looking into seed strapping, which is you raise one round of funding and you never raise again. That has become a new trend. Some VCs don't like it because it means you're not growing as exponentially as you should be. But the cost of software and starting a startup has gone down. So now it's more important for startups to figure out their unique value.
Yeah, very cool. And maybe if we could jump into Proptimal a bit, or what you're building with the 10x Real Estate Analyst, I'd love to just maybe kind of hear the elevator pitch or what led you to begin it and what the vision is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to talk about the 10x Analyst, and we're having a soft launch in the end of this month. But basically, what the 10x Analyst is the clone of myself to some extent. I was the analyst doing everything on a service basis. The interesting thing was we didn't do any marketing for the first 2 years, and we were completely booked. I didn't even have a website, right? So that was when I realized, you know what? I think I'm onto something and I needed to scale. So the traditional way that I was scaling was then I hired other people to do my work. I converted it into an agency model where I was overseeing these different projects and then realized very quickly, my goodness, it is so hard to find and train and manage a good analyst because the people who are good analysts, they also don't want to stay analysts forever. They want to move on to bigger opportunities, more exciting strategic work, and they don't just want to be sitting there and modeling all day. So then what happens is you have one round or one class of analysts, and then you finally get them to be really good at what they do, like financial modeling and pitch decks and analyzing markets and whatnot. And then now you've moved on, they've moved on, and you need to find a different group of people to do this. The barrier to entry in commercial real estate is so high because most people don't have the formal financial education that I did, or they didn't get trained by a large company like I did. And they didn't have 2 years of full time just doing financial modeling. More importantly, it's not worth their time to be doing these things. So I started building the 10x Analyst, which is a platform that offers tools and templates for these real estate companies. My mission for now is we're working on a tool that allows people to run financial analysis, even if they have no modeling experience.
It's amazing. And are you more focused on the acquisition side or financing, or have models for both?
They're pretty general. The majority of the value add is in the acquisitions because that's when you're using financial models and financial analyses to figure out whether you should invest in a deal or not. Afterwards, we also want to offer things like construction cost tracking and asset management. Maintaining a model after that is also important. Where we want to get to is we want firms that cannot hire a full-time analyst to feel like this is no longer a barrier for them. For the firms that do have analysts, we want this tool to empower them not to suffer through what I did, sitting in the office at 10 p.m. and still couldn't get a model to work. I don't want other analysts to have to go through that. And I believe that if you have something like that where you automate just the easiest part of the deal underwriting, then you can free people up to work on much more exciting things like strategic thinking, planning, and learning.
And do you have a long-term vision or any kind of North Star where you'd like to see the 10x analyst?
So for the 10x analyst, but more so for the overall industry and the mission that we have, right? Our mission is just to equip everyone with institutional quality tools, resources, and knowledge. I don't want people to feel like they are trying to get scrappy, find all the resources themselves, and not being able to tell what is good advice and what's not good advice. I want people to have a place to go to where they just know that if I come to Proptimal, I will have all the things that I need, and I know and trust that it's going to be good. I want to be somebody who is very honest about my incentives and say, like, look, I'm not here to sell you something because I want to make money off this online course or off this tool and whatnot. I just want you to do well. I want people to do well.
I love that. And those, I think, were some great parting words. But is there anything else you'd like to leave myself or the audience with?
I think if there's anything that we can take away from this is a couple of things. First, if you're a real estate company and worried about what AI is going to do to your industry and how you might get left behind, my advice is don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. AI is only a magnifying force to what you already have. If you're inexperienced and not very good at what you do, it doesn't matter if you're getting 100 leads per week with AI, because whatever leads you get, you're going to lose them anyway. You need to have the track record, experience, and credentials to back up what you do. And AI is just there to magnify you, whether it's for better or for worse. For the PropTech companies, I think it's a very exciting opportunity for people to get into the industry of developing startups and developing tech. We need more people in commercial real estate who actually know real estate instead of just relying on outsiders to build solutions that completely miss the point and miss the nuances of our industries. And then finally, with Proptimal, I'm very excited to see where this goes myself. It's an adventure, so we'll find out along the way. If people want to connect with me, I'm very active posting on LinkedIn. I try to respond to comments whenever I can. And I hope that I'd be able to help. If there's anything I can help with, just reach out and let me know.
Well, I will make sure to leave links in the description to Proptimal as well as your LinkedIn. Lilian, thank you so much for joining me. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope this has been helpful to everyone. I look forward to being in touch.
Absolutely. All righty. Thank you, folks, for tuning in to another episode of The Scaling Station. We'll see you next week.